Hello and thanks for joining us. Today I'm taking the third of my looks at the wines from the Kallstadter Saumagen vineyard from a producer called Koehler Ruprecht. So this is a wine from the Pfalz region of Germany, and these have all been Trocken wines. So we've already tried a Cabernet and a Spätburgunder, so we're working our way up the Pradicat levels, but with dry wines. So normally you might expect that there would be a potential that these would be getting sweeter as you're working through them, but no, what's actually happening because they've been fermented to dry is that the alcohol is getting higher, the richness of the fruit is greater. The previous two wines I've tried have been from the 2020 vintage. This is from the 2019 vintage, so quite a treat because that was quite a good vintage for the region. I might be understating that a little, actually. I think it was a very good vintage. First thing to say is, I mean, look at that lovely bright yellow colour, almost sort of heading towards a very pale gold. There's a certain intensity to it. The wine is starting to show some minor tears on the glass there, so that's because as opposed to the Cabernet that was 12% alcohol, this I believe is 13. So there's been a step up. The Cabernet was 12. The Spätburgunder are 12.5, and this is 13% alcohol. So all the wines are made in exactly the same way, but the successive passes are made through the vineyard. Normally 5, I think, in most vintages. And there's the selection of the grapes is, they say, based very much on colour. So the Cabernet will be picked as a pale yellow colour. As the grapes have become translucent and they've changed away from being green, it'll be pale yellow for the Cabernet, more golden for the Spätburgunder, and then by the time they reach Auslese level, they will be amber in colour. And again, just to sort of say that the soil types, the Saumagen vineyard, this potentially grosses Gewächs, or it is a grosses Gewächs, but Koehler Ruprecht choose not to use that designation because they want to stick with the Pradicat system. This wine of greater ripeness, and let's see what that's like in the glass. The nose is much more intense than the Auslese, than the Spätburgunder. There's a sort of it's lovely. There is a lifted lemony freshness to the wine, but there's also a honeyed intensity. Not necessarily suggesting sweetness, but just sort of honeyed nature. Let's have a taste. The wine is again completely dry and has very crisp acidity. I mean, it's mouth-watering. It incredibly sharp, actually, and that's malic acid. That's it. Sort of, there's a slight taste of unripe apples. That sort of acid, but actually the fruit incredibly impressive. Whereas the Spätburgunder was sort of simply a more powerful version of the Cabernet. The Auslese, and Auslese meaning selection, so these are specially picked out berries, just has a weight and a richness, and is right across my tongue, and is filling my mouth. So there's quite an impressive step up there. Some of that may be for the fact that this has an extra year's bottle age, and some of it may be due to the fact that 2019 was a really good vintage. But nonetheless, it's that sort of rich, full-bodied limes, actually. There's not so much of the sort of the rounded stone fruit notes that you got with the Spätburgunder. There are toasty notes from the fermentation, I guess, but a roundness, a richness, and there's the texture. There's a glycerol weight to the wine, and also weight presumably coming from the alcohol at 13%. There's a richness and an intensity to the length of the wine. The flavours are lasting well. There's that sort of toasty lime is still showing on the finish quite a few seconds after I've emptied my mouth of the wine. So beautiful intensity, and actually that minerality, the whetstone, the saline notes are starting to develop more on the finish. The wine is, I mean, I'm saying it's more intense, it's medium bodied certainly, but the sort of the length and the intensity of flavours is impressive. I guess again, if you're used to drinking Riesling from Germany of this quality, it's perhaps a little bit of a surprise that there isn't sugar in there, and actually the place of that is taken by that sort of saline note on the finish. And the wine's got quite a precise finish. It's very focused and citrusy, very, very clean. So it's an interesting wine. I think this would be fabulous with a very large range of cheeses or charcuterie and that sort of thing, because that would those would play as a fantastic backdrop, and the fruit would come out beautifully. I mean, clearly this is a wine that could be aged for 10 to 15 years, probably 20 to 30, and will, you know, increase on that honeyed, waxy sort of development that it has, and its richness will, and good acidity, we'll see it develop absolutely beautifully. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this interesting. Do feel free to go back and watch the videos I've also done for the Spätlese and the Cabinet, and hopefully that will help put this in context. But thank you for joining us, and do watch again. Bye now.